Creating your own reality. Is it possible for me? I am Jennifer K. Hill, the consciousness architect, and I am here to tell you that it's not only possible, it's closer than you might think. Welcome to the show. Hello, friends, and welcome back for another episode of Regarding Consciousness. I am Jennifer K. Hill, CEO of OptiMatch, App, and host of this show. So grateful to search the world to bring you some of the greatest thought leaders, scientists, and individuals who are helping transform the consciousness of our planet. This guest we have is a repeat guest. It's only been a handful of people we've had the pleasure of having back on the show a couple of times. And so we are so grateful to have Dr. Cynthia Sue Larson join us again today. We had first done an episode with her about a year and a half ago on her book, Quantum Jumps. And today we are going to deep dive into her latest book, which is called The Mandela Effect and Its Society. She's also written another book called Reality Shifts and High Energy Money. Cynthia has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley and an MBA degree, a doctorate of divinity, and a second degree black belt. So don't mess with her. Cynthia is the founder of Reality Shifters and first president of the International Mandela Effect Conference, managing director of Foundations of Mind, and creator and host of Living the Quantum Dream podcast. She has been featured in many different shows, including Gaia, the History Channel, Coast to Coast AM, and BBC News, to name a few. She reminds us in every situation to ask ourselves, how good can it get? Cynthia, it's great to be back with you again and a deep dive into your latest book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be talking with you, Jennifer. It's such a treat. I really look forward to it.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Our last conversation we had, I definitely encourage listeners to go back and check it out. We talked about quantum jumping. So let's maybe start with a little bit about your background on quantum jumping for anybody who might have missed that episode or is not familiar with your expertise in that area. And then we'll delve from there a little bit into the Mandela effect and explain for people who don't know what that is. I know I didn't up until about 3 or 4 years ago. So I think it's a beautiful concept to share with our audience.
Quantum jumping is basically, it's based on and founded on the whole concept that we're always choosing different realities. Some people think of them as timelines, and each choice we make is guiding us into literally a different reality. And this is the concept that is actually quite ancient. A lot of spiritual traditions refer to it. But in my book, Quantum Jumps, I was going through the scientific basis that we have to know that this is actually quite a thing, that it's something that is within range for all of us. And quantum jumping is not just a phenomenon that only occurs in the microscopic quantum so-called realm, but also occurs at every level of reality, including our daily lives. So if we wish to become, for example, more heart-focused, we can actually point at our heart. My book, Quantum Jumps, describes really simple exercises like that have been scientifically laboratory tested and proven. And then it moves into some of the more esoteric things that can happen with quantum jumps, where you can more consciously operate with basically navigating through emotional realms and recognizing that by changing your sort of internal thoughts, your feelings, that you can guide yourself into a very positive reality that didn't even look like it was there before. So that's it in a nutshell.
I love it. I was reading an article lately where it wasn't about quantum jumping, but it was about a scientific study where people were told a certain group, there was a control group and another group, and the other group was told that they were going to be lucky and that they were just going to be the luckiest people. And the people who were told they were lucky were unequivocally 6 months after the study was completed, still experiencing themselves as luckier and having physical manifestations of that in life. So it's so fascinating that the truths we tell ourselves or the untruths, I try to catch myself, Cynthia. I don't know if you or any of you out there listening do this. If I say something I'm not committed to, I try to catch myself. And I even don't like to use the word try. So I'm going to reword that sentence. I catch myself in the moment, just like I did when I used the word try. And I reframe the language we use because language is so powerful. We forget that our words are constantly the paintbrushes with which we create our world. And yet so many of us live unconscious to it. I think it's beautiful that your work, Cynthia, and so many others is illuminating this.
Yeah, my book, Quantum Jumps, wraps up with the question, how good can it get? Which I recommend adding to anything, any idea, intention, decision, anything at all that each and every one of us is doing, because it can help to guide us onward and upward instead of subliminally, subconsciously sabotaging ourselves or others.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like we have these infinite possibilities. I think I was first introduced to the idea of quantum jumping before it was popularized with the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, and of course Ant-Man and all those wonderful movies that made it a little bit more sexy and fun. And I remember Jean Houston, a class I did with her years ago, had talked about that. And it's one of my favorite exercises in class. Jean has you envision putting your hands out before the curtains of time and envisioning all of the potential realities, the potential reality where you're with your soulmate, where you're on a beach somewhere in Hawaii, whatever your version, you have a family, whatever makes you happy and brings you fulfillment. And then you just connect while at the same time elevating an emotion to walking through the curtains of time into that reality. And I cannot tell you, Cynthia, I'm sure firsthand, how many times I've used that exercise and had unprecedented results that really just shock you to your core. You're like, wow, out of all the realities, everything is telling me of what I'm visually seeing right now, that this reality has a 0.0001% chance. And yet, if you really hold to it with perfect certainty, great example of this is you can have anything you want. A friend of mine literally was on a call with one of his dear friends. And while he's on the call with her, she says, oh, I just gave up my life insurance policy. I'm never going to be able to have a baby. And he said, you're going to be a great mom. Why not?
Mhm.
And she said, well, I have no eggs. And so he just jumped over there and they produced a beautiful child. And I had another friend who had a similar story to that. And I think it just goes to show you that it's uncertainty for a potential reality or future does directly influence its likelihood of manifesting, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned Jean Houston, because I was involved on a project with a screenplay writer who works making movies sometimes and plays Sherry Steinkilner and Jean Houston. And they called me in as a creative consultant to put together a very special play, a stage. It's like a one or person play, a couple people on a stage. So it's small, but it was powerful, talking about these different realities that we move through. Because Jean Houston had been subscribing to my Reality Shifters free newsletter, I think for decades, because I started publishing it back in 1999. So it's been 25 years now. And when Jean wanted to put in what's the physics of this, what do we know, and flesh out what it feels like when characters literally end up in a completely different reality. We had so much fun with that project. That was 6 or so years ago now, but it was so much fun. And I got to see it. It was a special celebration for her birthday. So it
Well,
was a wonderful experience in Ashland, Oregon. So much fun. Yeah,
so
but I think that's the key, is knowing it's possible and recognizing that this does happen for people. That's why I publish a monthly newsletter, actually, because then I'm able to share firsthand reports from people who are doing this so that everyone can see, oh my gosh, look what they're doing. That they went through a situation where it looked like there was no way through it, no options existed, and just by being hopeful or various circumstances exist. So people share their success tips in these firsthand reports. And when I get them, I go back and forth, inviting people to share with me. How were you feeling? What were you thinking throughout the experience? Because it's so powerful. We're so much more powerful beings than most of us recognize.
I couldn't agree more with you, Cynthia. It was so funny. My mom has a car that is possessed. God bless her. She has this Hyundai car, whatever it is that she loves. And there's been an issue with her radio where it will randomly start dialing people, playing bizarre music. I don't know what it is. So for years, she put off getting it fixed. Finally, she's, oh, it's going to be $1,000. I don't really want to spend out. She takes the car in and she thinks miracles happen. They're like, oh, it's under extreme warranty and you're getting in just in the nick of time and it'll be like $50. And so she's amazing. So first she's very elated and excited about this. And then they never call her back about the parts. So she calls them and they're like, the service manager will have to call you, ma'am. There's an issue with your extended warranty. So my mom and I talk every day and she says, honey, I'm a little concerned. I think they're going to try and bamboozle me and now tell me it's out of warranty and that it is going to be the full thousand. I'm going to have to take it. And I said, Mom, what if we shifted into a different reality? What if we created that the original reality that you created was possible, that there is a potentiality where you don't have to pay the 1,000 and that it will be fixed with ease and effortlessly in some way that we can't even see. And she said,
Yes.
"Okay, honey." I'll give it a try. She said, "Thank you for that feedback." She texted me later that night and was delighted. And she's, "Honey, you'll never believe it. They weren't planning to charge me the 1,000. They were just calling because they're like, 'Oh, we're so sorry, Miss L. It's 100, not 50. Is that okay with you?'" And she's, "Yes, it's very much okay." And she was
Mhm.
just delighted because it saved her $900. And she said the shift in consciousness really helped her to
Oh,
be
yes.
receptive to that. Because think of how many of us go in looking to punish somebody, whether it's our spouse or a service provider or whatever it is. And when we come in with that punitive energy looking for what's wrong, our consciousness and our neuroscience, literally our brain, our consciousness will only focus on the things that will prove us right. So we'll start fights where none but we're like tilting at windmills, like that old adage.
And we definitely have a collective effect as well, which is what got me into this next book that I'm put
Yeah.
out this year. This is a brand new book it's about the Mandela Effect. And then the subtitle is Awakening from Me, which is a shorthand for Mandela Effect, to We, which is really much more of a wise human wisdom experience and awakening effect. So it's extraordinary when we think of collectively, what are we doing to the planet, to each other? Because we can see it we're starting to see it in our individual lives, right? But then the next leap is, what are we doing together collectively? And fortunately, there are lots of good things that are happening. I know this is the Halloween episode.
Yeah. Yes. It's a Halloween episode, so I'm feeling a little spooky right now. I know it's in the next few days.
Well, maybe I'll start with some spooky stuff about the
Oh,
Mandela Effect.
please.
Are you familiar with the term Mandela Effect, Jennifer?
I only learned it 3, 4 years ago, 2020. I remember the first time and the person who told me about it, it was when I was hosting shows on a network called Awake, and one of the producers of the show brought it up, and I was flummoxed. I had never heard of it, and then she explained to me what it is, so I'd love to have you share with it probably much more elegantly than I could with our audience.
It's a much older phenomenon than the time frame would suggest, because we tend to look to the popularization of the term, which was coined by Fiona Broome after she attended a Dragon Con expo or something like that, a conference. And people were noticing that Nelson Mandela was alive. And it was a little confusing because they remembered that he had passed away. So I'm giving an example and explaining the name Mandela Effect. So that was an example where a famous celebrity turned out to be a political leader in South Africa. The president is what he later became. But people remembered back in the 1980s that he had been incarcerated on Robben's Island and then he'd passed away. So that was a big memory that people shared. And so that's where the term Mandela effect came from. However, that phenomenon has been studied by myself and others. I've been studying it for 25 years. Mary Rose Barrington, she's passed away now, but she was basically studying it going from early 1900s up until the late 1990s. So she called it something else. She called it just one of those things. And I called it reality shifts. And so did PMH Atwater. She called it reality shifts. But it's the same phenomenon. And when I conducted studies in the year 2000 and also 2013 to find out how are people experiencing these, it's an experience where physical reality is different. And so the Mandela effect is we remember things collectively quite differently than what history is now telling us. So it's like a misaligned memory, if you will. I'm not going to say it's a mistaken memory. I know that if you look it up, you can see it'll say things like collective misremembering. That is jumping to a huge conclusion about what's going on. And so I recommend that we don't call it misremembering, even though some of the studies that are coming out of psychology right now still call it that. I think that's leading people down sort of the wrong path to then presume like, oh, we're misremembering. Because the things that are happening are large numbers of people are collectively remembering things differently, like the Fruit of the Loom logo. We had if you remember what that looked like, a bunch of fruit gathered together, and this would be on T-shirts and underwear. And then was there something else associated with the fruit that you remember?
No, I don't really remember much about it.
A lot of us remember a cornucopia. It's a special kind of a basket that curls upward, and so the fruit is spilling out of this very elegant basket that was on the logo. And so it's interesting that people remember that so specifically, but not fruit sitting on a platter or a plate or on a picnic blanket or anything like that. We have a very specific memory that it was on in a basket. And similarly, there are phrases from movies like the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs movie. Do you remember when the Wicked Witch looks in the mirror and she's turned an apple into, it's a poisoned apple, but she's making it look nice. But before all that happens, she's constantly asking the mirror a question about who is the fairest of them all. But do you remember how she starts the question? What does she say?
Mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? I could be getting it wrong.
No, I remember that. And when the movie came out, Walt Disney himself said that shortly after the movie came out. I'm making a big deal out of this because that's never what that movie ever said. It has only ever said, magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all?
What?
You know,
Oh my
I
god.
know.
And that's one of those quiz questions where it's, "I'll take a Disney fact for 500, Alex," and nope. I think we don't
Yeah.
know that one.
So it's stuff like that. And people might think, who cares? That's just a logo and it's just a movie. It's weird, spooky for Halloween, but why do we care? But the Mandela effect also, it affects things like physiology, anatomy, such as where the heart in our body is. If you, in America, you say the Pledge of the Allegiance to the flag. And I was taught to put my hand in a certain place on my chest, right? I don't know if you were. It was slightly to the left, is what the teacher explained, taking the opportunity to say the heart is slightly to the left of center. And now it's not. Now the heart is in the center of the chest. Yeah, that's not, and also the kidneys have moved up to the point that for those of some of us have done martial arts or things like boxing, any of those sports where there's contact, it's important to know not to strike the kidneys, but the location of where not to strike has changed. And that's interesting because it used to be in the lower back, like the place you'd put your hands if you're just resting after hiking up a hill. But that's not where they are now. They've moved up and under the rib cage. So I've even heard from people who've gone in for procedures to routinely check their kidneys. And now the doctor comes in through the front instead of through the back. And that was mind blowing to the people who've experienced this. Having said that, not everybody experiences all the same Mandela effects. So what's happening is we're starting to see clusters, like groupings, like some people really resonate with mirror on the wall and others with the kidney moving up. Like for sure that changed, but they might not care so much about one of the others, like the cornucopia on fruit of the loom. But there are pretty much so many examples now in every facet of life affecting reality itself that it seems to me that it's indicating something is going on, which leads people to wonder what's happening, what's the cause of this, where's it going, what does it mean, who is being affected? And those are the questions that I explore in the book that just came out this year.
Let's deep dive in that because I can hear, Cynthia, our audience, the inquiring minds want to know. They're asking, okay, we've given a few examples, the fruit of the loom, the kidneys, mirror on the wall examples. How does this impact our day-to-day life, and how can we bring our consciousness to it to actively participate in the Mandela effects that serve us, as opposed to being in Mandela effect situations that perhaps are adverse to us or our loved ones, or things that we don't want to live in a reality where that's the truth? How could we use that for our good?
Oh, that's such a great question. I love talking with you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Super good question. Yeah, that's on track. Because once people know, for example, like what we talked about with quantum jumping, of course we can influence our own lives, but it might seem daunting to be having a positive effect on all of humanity, especially when we're starting to see what looks like evidence that people are literally side by side in different realities. And it can be jarring. Like we could be talking, I think a lot of us in the last few years have had that feeling. We're talking to someone, right? Maybe our neighbor or a family member, and they totally don't see things the way we do. And so maybe it's quite true that they're living in a completely different timeline. And this has been suggested in ancient writings, like the Hopi prophecy rock has it carved in stone on a petroglyph that there will be a time, and they were predicting it would be happening right about now, that it shows graphically two timelines, one where people sort of their heads come disconnected slightly from their bodies, and then they go marching. It looks like they're going up into the sky and then they vanish. And I think it's interesting that now we have transhumanists talking about the cloud and so forth. So personally, I would recommend staying on the lower path, like the Hopi talk about, and I'm referring to their wisdom because they've been expecting this time to come where people would be in these two different realities. They put it right there on the rock. And they were showing that it would happen after great shakings of the world. There'd be a couple of them. Some people say, oh, World War I, World War II. So then when it proceeds on the lower path, it continues around the corner of the rock. It keeps going. So even the elderly and the infirm and the children, people with canes and walking sticks, they're making it just fine. How do they do it? That would be following that ancient wisdom, which I really resonate with, which is to stay close and stay connected to ourselves and to each other. Keep our Kopavi, that's the crown chakra, open to receive intuition and spiritual guidance of a kind that we feel is right and true and good and uplifting for all. And then keep our heart open to connect with others, whether it's the four-leggeds or the winged ones or the fish or the animals and all the animals and insects and plants. So it's all the life forms. And then our own relations, our own human families, even those who aren't necessarily agreeing with everything that we're saying, maybe they don't see it our way. It's very important, even then, to keep our hearts open. So this would be I would just say, yes, I love their guidance there. Keep the Kopavi, the crown chakra open, and keep your heart open too. And then that way, I think it makes sense. Then when what you're creating together collaboratively, obviously, you can ask how good can it get, not just for yourself, but for all concerned.
I love that. I'm going to say a quote. There's a lovely gentleman I was on a call with right before this, and I loved what he said so much. I'm going to read it to you. So he started off as a pastry chef, and he was sharing a beautiful story with me. And we were talking about both of our own awakening moments, whatever you want to call it. And he was sharing, I had this moment where it was like a stream of light came in when I was in excruciating pain. And all of a sudden, everything shifted out of it. So he had been this pastry chef for a long time. This light comes in, he transforms, and he remembered the exact moment this lady had said to him. He had helped her up an escalator, and she had literally blessed him and said, God bless you, but with perfect conviction and certainty. And he was clear that in that moment was the power of her word. So we're talking about food, and I love it. Whatever you eat, whether you're a carnivore or a vegan or whatever in between, I think the important thing is to honor the light in all the food. What he said, though, took it a step further. He said to be a cook or in hospitality is to have a genuine interest in the well-being of another human being and to be of service to them. And based on what you were just saying, Cynthia, I was like, my God, could you imagine if every restaurant we ate at, every time we cooked our children or our friends or whomever dinner or ourselves, that we were really being of service and really of genuine concern rather than just, I don't know about anybody out there. I'll speak for myself. There are some days where I'm like, oh, shoot, I forgot to eat. Must put fuel in fire. And yet, what if we could bring our consciousness, bring our awareness to the food we eat, bring our consciousness to the way that we're of service to others, whether it's in business or doing a podcast or having a conversation with a friend.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I can picture it right now that we're sharing our love and our light, and I feel it when I talk to you. You bring so much light through, and I just love joining you in this process and sharing it with everybody who can hear this. And thank you for sharing that about the pastry chef. I love it. And when someone prepares food, of course, that's a blessing that goes directly into people. And when I donate blood, I often meditate and I like to donate blood because I feel like it's uplifting for me. I get brand new blood and then I can share it. And right now we don't have ways to fabricate it, but I like to put intention into it. And I think when each of us is doing that and bringing blessings and upliftment for whoever's involved, I like to bless everybody involved or with wherever it goes. So suddenly, if the doctor's tired, they'll have a lot more energy and clarity. And if there's a nursing staff, they'll be tremendously working like a team perfectly. So that's what I'm meditating on when I'm donating the blood. This is going to be so perfect. Everything's going to go spectacularly well. The person, even if they just get a little bit of the blood, it'll be transformative. It'll be the moment. It's like a blessing that I like to do when I donate the blood. So I think it's similar to the chef. And it's just so perfect. If we could do this with everything we do, what a magical, blessed place this would be. I can picture it.
I love it. I noticed this when I first started studying Kabbalah many years ago. There's this ancient wisdom called the 72 Names of God. That's not a religious thing. It's ancient Aramaic letters that are imbued with different energies, such as soulmate energy, prosperity, unconditional love. One of my favorite things to do if I'm walking down a big street or just walking down a street anywhere is I like to bless children and other people, and I like to just use these ancient names to be like, "Please bless that child with health, Mem Hey Shin. Please send that person unconditional love, Hey Hey Ayin. Please send that person prosperity, Samecha Lef Lamed." And so I love to use that energy and literally just as I look at people, just send these little internal blessings to them.
Ah, it's so wonderful. And going back to what we were saying, what's the value, what's the usefulness of this Mandela effect? I like to, in the book that I just wrote, I share how you can notice there's something called a flip flop. It's a special kind of Mandela effect. Maybe some of your listeners will have had this experience. It's one reality. In one reality, I saw that we had an elderly family dog and he got cataracts. And so I'm looking at the dog and oh gosh. But then I realized that my choice, my heart, my direct blessing ability for the dog is capable of helping switch it over. So I just imagine, oh, he's fine. And then his eyes were clear. But then my daughter, then she saw the dog and she said, "Oh, mom, bad news about the dog." And I said, "Oh, is it his eyes?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, here's what we do." I'm just bringing her into it now, one at a time. Just saying, here's what we do. Yes, we see the dog. It looks like he's getting cataracts, but we know that doesn't need to be the case. So we just picture that his eyes are clear and then look again and probably he's just fine. Sure enough, he was fine. And then my husband came to me. Bad news about the dog. Oh my gosh. Okay. What's going on? Same thing, of course. So I say, here's what we do. And then for the rest of his days, the dog had clear vision, no cataracts.
I'm gonna I'm gonna share that with so many people. It goes back to so many old spiritual teachings and adages about seeing nothing as whole, complete, and perfect. And most
Yes.
importantly, ourselves, everything from the dog with the cataracts to your neighbor you dislike, whomever it is, it's all
Yes.
a reflection of ourselves. And in one moment, if we can just shift our consciousness, shift our perspective, look for the good, look for the wholeness in ourselves and situations, then in that moment, we access infinite different realities just by that choice point, as you began today's episode by saying, we literally have infinite choices and infinite ways of seeing things and infinite outcomes, yet we live our lives as though there's only one.
And I love to share the quantum superpower toolkit, which is things like superposition of states. So my book, Mandela Effect and its Society, it was briefly on, or for several days, almost a week, it was on the Amazon new release Quantum Theory, #1 book, because it does go through all of these quantum ideas and brings them into everyday language so that we can, each and every one of us, adopt this toolkit and recognize nature works this way. For those people that need it, and some people feel like too much science, I don't need it. I already know this works. So you can skip that section. But I just have so much fun with the book sharing that because to me, there's a direct one-to-one translation. It's okay. In some terminology, we're talking about these flip-flops, but that is superposition of states. And we can play with that. We can recognize that we're in this sort of it's unknowable state. There hasn't been a collapse of the wave function when it's just flowing like a wave. And then when we choose to observe it in the place that's how good can it get positioned, then there it is. And if it looks like it's not quite perfect yet, then let it go back to the uncertainty and we can keep playing with it. So it's a lot of fun.
That is so beautiful. I almost had this vision in my mind of one of those bubbles, like when you're a little kid and you can just envision it and it's like it's coming out and then it's starting to form, or it can go back into its original form and then become something else or clouds. So it could be anything you want it to be. And I just love that. It just paints such a vivid picture in one's mind, Cynthia. Tell our listeners or viewers before we get into where to find the book, is there any last piece of wisdom that you're feeling called to share or something you want to reiterate or that I didn't ask you but you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers today?
Yeah, I mentioned briefly this is an old phenomenon, and I share some stories of Carl Jung, how he himself experienced what to me is clearly the Mandela effect back in the 1930s, way before it had that name. So I love telling stories, and this book is full of them. My own experiences. Carl Jung, he was in Italy, and he was with a friend, Tony Wolff, looking at a baptistry of Ravenna, Italy. And when he was there, he saw these huge, giant 6 by 8 foot mosaics on 4 of the 8 walls of an octagonal room with very distinctive blue light. And each of the mosaics showed a scene, a biblical scene, basically. One of them was the Jewish people passing through with Moses, I think. I've never seen these mosaics. The reason I've never seen them is because they don't exist, even though Carl Jung and Tony spent quite a long time talking about them, describing them. interpreting them. Here's the baptism of Jesus, and here's another. They were all involving water, all four of these, which is also interesting. But they apparently never did exist. So that's spooky for Halloween. It's also fun because that's Carl Jung. And it shows that I've had a lot of fun putting this book together. So I think people will love the stories and the history and the science and the heart and the soul of this whole phenomenon, which to me is part of the evolutionary path for humanity at this time. Things may look impossible. We might look at problems in the world, but together, I'm certain that we can rise above and we can attain this golden age, no matter what it looks like. And that's what the real message of this book is all about.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Dr. Cynthia Sue Larson here with us today, best-selling author, incredible quantum physicist, pioneer in her field, so much so that Jean Houston subscribes to her newsletter. So I think that's a lesson for us all. Where can we subscribe to your newsletter, follow your work, find the book? Where would we get to do all of that?
My website is realityshifters.com, and that's a good place to check out the books, subscribe to the newsletter, and see what I'm up to. Yes. Thank you so much. This just flew.
I know.
Such a great time.
Speaking of time, like we just flew through today's episode. So all the more reason to have you on again, Cynthia. It's such a pleasure to have you here, and wishing each and every one of you the opportunity to jump into the timeline, to live in the reality that is the highest and best good of your soul. And may you ask yourself every day, how good can it get? I am Jennifer Cahill, and I thank you for your time.